All right, so you want to talk about some WoW Battlegrounds. Specifically, this whole thing blowing up on the forums about Mistweaver Monks. Are they OP when it comes to running the flag? Some players are saying absolutely, others not so much. We've got a whole mess of opinions and arguments to unpack here.
It's classic, really. You see this all the time in online games. One side convinced something's broken, the other defending it as perfectly fine. In this case, you've got folks like Airdrat, our original poster, who were seriously frustrated. They see these Mistweavers just dominating with their mobility, torpedoes, teleports, the whole shebang, making them near impossible to pin down.
And Airdrat does not hold back, calling them absolutely busted overpowered. They're specifically pointing to that monk toolkit as the problem.
And you can kind of see where they're coming from, right? Picture this. You're in the thick of it, battlegrounds intense, every point matters, and suddenly you've got this teleporting, speed-boosting monk zipping around you like it's nothing. Frustrating. Yeah, I can see it.
Oh, absolutely. And the comments, forget about it. It's like a chorus of I told you so's. One person even said it's like trying to catch smoke. Even Windwalker monks, which are no slouches in the mobility department, get brought up as being easier to deal with.
It all comes back to this constant balancing act game developers face, making sure things that are fun and flavorful in one context, like say a dungeon or raid, don't become completely busted in a fast-paced PvP setting like a battleground.
Trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, except the square peg has teleport and the round hole is on fire.
Exactly. But okay, before we grab the pitchforks, there's another side to this story. We've also got folks like Eguns pushing back, saying Mistweavers are far from invincible. Even with all that speed they point out, you can still burst them down, especially if you coordinate with your team. That flag debuff hits hard.
Teamwork making the dream work, or in this case, making the Mistweaver eat dirt. Classic.
Right, and it just goes to show how crucial strategy and knowing your enemy can be. You can get so hung up on whether something's OP, you forget that good old-fashioned teamwork can be just as powerful.
Couldn't agree more. But, oh boy, this is where the conversation takes a turn. One commenter, Chanks, jumps in with, well, let's just say a very strong opinion. Their take, a lot of these complaints are just bad players blaming the game.
Yeah, they did not come to play. Shanks goes on to say good players can read Mistweaver movements, use the map, coordinate with their team. They even give specific breakdowns of how other classes can counter them. It's a whole get good, but with, like, detailed instructions on how to get good.
What I find interesting is this gets to the heart of a certain philosophy you see a lot in competitive games. The idea being, if something can be countered, even if it takes crazy skill or perfect coordination, then it's not really unbalanced.
So yeah, that move might be tough to counter, but if you spend the next year mastering this one weird trick, you can totally shut it down. Pretty much. And while it might seem dismissive, Chanks does raise a good point. Maybe sometimes, instead of crying OP, we need to look inward a little. Up our own game, you know?
So less complaining, more studying the game and our opponents. Gotcha.
Exactly. But to be fair, not everyone's on board with Chanks' tough love approach.
And this is where we hear from Carvey. They're saying, hold on a second, I'm getting left in the dust by these Mistweavers. And get this, they're playing at 2100 MMR. So not exactly a newbie who doesn't know the maps right.
Yeah, Carvey's coming in with that been there, done that energy, and it really throws a wrench into the whole just get good argument. If players at that MMR are having trouble, it does make you wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's a legitimate balance issue here.
Right. And Carvey doesn't just complain, they actually offer solutions. Like, hey Blizzard, how about Mistweavers drop the flag when they use torpedo? Or maybe slap them with a speed penalty while carrying it.
I like that. It's not just nerf this, it's here's how you could tweak things. Very constructive.
For sure. It's like they're saying, I love playing, but this one thing feels a bit off.
Exactly. And it gets right to that heart of game design. Finding that sweet spot between keeping things fun and unique, you know, class fantasy and all that, but also making sure it's still fair for everyone else. Making them drop the flag, that kind of messes with their whole flow, right? But a flag-specific speed penalty? That's more targeted.
Definitely a tough call for the devs. You're trying to please everyone, and everyone's got a different idea of what balanced means.
You got that right. Now, of course, our friend Chanks, they're not just going to let that slide. They come right back at Carvey, doubling down on the whole awareness thing. Basically, if you're paying attention, they argue, a Mistweaver shouldn't be able to just waltz away with the flag.
Yeah, Chanks does not mince words. They pretty much say players are asleep at the wheel if they're letting that happen.
It's a bold strategy for sure. And it speaks to this idea that if something can theoretically be countered, then it's not unbalanced. Even if countering, it takes like superhuman reflexes and perfect timing.
So it's not about can you counter, but how realistic is it to actually pull it off consistently?
Exactly. And that's where the line gets blurry. What works on paper doesn't always translate to the chaos of an actual match.
Ain't that the truth? And then Carvey throws in this curveball, bringing up how Blizzard has actually nerfed flag carriers before. Specifically, Druids and Demon Hunters got hit with the nerf bat a while back.
Good point. It reminds us this whole debate's not happening in a vacuum. WoW's got a long history of these balancing acts, especially when it comes to PvP.
What's OP today is yesterday's news. Or something like that.
Right. And players know this. They've seen it before. So when Cardio brings that up, it's like saying, hey, this isn't unprecedented. You've stepped in before, Blizzard.
Just adds another layer to the whole thing, doesn't it? The past always finds a way to creep back in. So where does that leave us? We've got passionate opinions flying around, talk about game mechanics, even a little bit of philosophy sprinkled in there for good measure. That's a lot.
It really is. And, we might not walk away with a definitive answer here, but it does get you thinking about how games are designed, right?
Yeah.
How do you create something that's fun and engaging, but also fair? Especially when you've got different players who want different things out of the experience.
Yeah, on one hand, you want each class to feel special, to have its own strengths, its own identity. But then on the other, you don't want it to be so strong, it ruins the game for everyone else.
Exactly. And finding that balance, that's the holy grail for game devs, especially in a game like WoW that's been around forever and has such a dedicated community.
And we can't forget about player agency either. Like Chenks was saying, maybe sometimes it's not about nerfing or buffing, but about players stepping up their game, learning the ins and outs, adapting to new challenges.
Absolutely. There's something really satisfying about mastering a game like that, when you can predict your opponent's moves, when you can outsmart them with strategy and skill. It's part of what makes online gaming so compelling.
It's like, take any competitive scene, chess, basketball, whatever, there's always going to be a meta, right? Some strategy or move that's considered dominant. But that doesn't mean it's unbeatable or that the game's broken. It just means you got to adapt, evolve, find new ways to come out on top.
Couldn't have said it better myself.